I've been asked to do a quick overview of the features in the NORMA Pro tool. Won't waste more time here since we have to do this quickly. NORMA Pro extensions are divided roughly into those that add model presentation and management features. The first of these is the shape grouping. And then we'll get into multi-page relational view and word report generation. The next group after that will be elements that add data to the model and additional generated file outputs. So this is an ORM model of ORM. You can already see colors in the notes. This is available because the shape grouping extension is on. Okay, so we already have that. Now let's see how we can add our own color group. Let's grab some core objects here. We're going to include them in a group. Include in a new group. Let's call that group core elements so we can recognize it without caps lock. Elements. Okay, so inside this we just have the elements. There's no typing node, but if you go here to your type, you can see that you have a ORM shape color. Okay, what does this let you do? This says now I have properties for each of the colors that control different parts of the thing. So for my outline, I can do a fuchsia, and all of these will light up with that color. Okay, and similarly, we can do a orchid and a light yellow, and we've got good colors. Yellow. Okay, so we've got good coloring on the diagram. You can see the properties individually here. These can also be turned on and off by determining which diagrams we put them on. They're off. This is very useful for presentations or group discussions where you can highlight different parts of the model. Okay, so the next group we're going to do is a missing. Let's just call that missing. And we're going to add a group type of ORM shape missing. And while we're at it, let's add a model browser color. Okay, so the model browser color says, well, we can take anything in the model browser and change the colors there as well. Right now, nothing's missing, so nothing's in this group, and the color doesn't affect anything. Let's go to something that only has one item in the group, and we're going to take this object and just delete the shape. Okay, there our shape shows up in the model. It's also colorized up here, and this gives us a chance to pull it back out. Note down here in our error list we have a error item, and we can take that, double click that anytime. You'll get one error if there's anything in here, but we can now drag this back out and create our shape. The next extension is the multi-page relational view. NORMA comes with a single page relational view, but as you may have noticed, when you get above 20 or 30 shapes, it's very hard to see what's going on. So the multi-page relational view, you have to add your own shapes, but you can have as many pages as you like to represent your model. That also helps in there to let you track what shapes are not on any model. And by shapes, I mean shapes for tables and for foreign key constraints. So here we have a diagram. I've selected multi-page relational view already. That gave me one new relational page. It gave me a new group called schema public missing shapes. This acts just like the shape grouping for ORM shapes. These are just table shapes. So I can drag items out of here, or I can drag them directly out of the hierarchy down here, the schema. So let's grab an element, pull it out here. We're going to see a few things happen here. So object type, so that came out. What else happened? This is still here. You still have your model because there are shapes in here. But we got a whole bunch of foreign keys. So once the shape is on the diagram, the foreign keys add to unknown items. These foreign keys can be dragged out if you want to, and at that point should start disappearing from the other table. Boom. So now those are all pulled back out. If you drag a foreign key and the shape isn't on the page, you actually will get a prompt to create two shapes. You get a drag line for a second shape. There you've created your foreign key. So there are a lot of helps in here to add new shapes. Notice that's a second shape, of course, or second page for the same shape. These can be renamed like any other diagram page. So now you pull these out, things start disappearing, you start filling your shapes in. Things can get pretty messy pretty quickly, as with any relational diagram. So this has some options that aren't on the other thing. The first thing is source and target columns. By source and target, I mean the end of the line without the pointy thing on it and the thing it's pointing to. So in this case, the column is bound. See, this column data type is pointing to that row. So you're bound to that row and that column. That makes for a very messy line routing. All right, so your other option is to go in and say you're going to go to source columns only, which means this end is bound but that is not, or you can go to none and you get much cleaner line routing on the thing. If you just go source columns, you'll still have some cross. By default, the cross is just a cross. You can also turn the jumps back on, which you'll see in the other model as well. This controls whether you display these little guys or not, and how often those are displayed. So if we do that, now we've got a fairly clean model. So that's the multi-page relational view. So the next extension is the word report generator. This is technically run without an extension. If you want to, you can just go on the word report menu instead of word HTML report. However, the customization is recommended if you want a really clean report. So one of the major issues this deals with that is not dealt with on the HTML report is it's actually pulling in and generating diagrams, which also means diagrams sometimes don't fit on the page. You need to break them up into pieces, and how those diagrams are broken up into pieces is a large part of the algorithms used in the word report generator. This shows the groups added by the word report generator, which is word report customization. Basically, it's the same group with 3 different settings. One is for titles, word report diagram titles. Down here, apply notes to, and then omissions and descriptions. So the word report breaks up pages into multiple pieces, as you can see here. The yellow, which is just a custom annotation on the titles group, ends up as your page title, and then these end up as paragraphs inside. This is an omitted note that we don't want in the final report. Your other report settings are in the tool windows, designer options, and here you have word report. So these decide things like paper size and how shapes are combined and how you determine what is a single diagram or a subdiagram, etc. We're not going to get into those here. Here's the report. Generate report. Now you have word report in addition to HTML report. Just override our old one. This will stop very quickly if you are not if you are using that file. Okay, so there were no issues here. You see this? This is a clean run, which means all of the pages fit. Hit yes at this point, and now you'll see the diagram. This is the single diagram, and these are the subdiagrams that were pulled off of that. Like constraint has a bunch of subdiagrams on it. So your verbalizations are hyperlinked to the types. Reasonable hyperlinking in here as would be expected. So that's the word report. So the absorption grouping extension currently has hierarchies and partial models in it. In the future, we'll definitely put more pieces in here as we take advantage of this improved technology. Relational will be in here eventually as well. So the hierarchies in the present allow you to arrange your OR model hierarchically. So when OR model does not have one hierarchy on it, you can have multiple hierarchies, and that becomes especially true when you get into partial models, which is also supported here. I'm not going to show partial models, but basically you're able to take starting elements of a model and then expand from there to automatically bring in other elements. So you can bring in functional roles or mandatory roles or these other pieces, right? You automatically get identifiers, supertypes, this sort of thing from adding a single element. So what that lets you do is define parts of a model, and then we can build hierarchies over the partial models and generate XML schema files off of each of those. So here we've added the absorption grouping extension. It's already on. Now this adds hierarchies over here. If you look in the group types dialog, you'll also see partial model. And let's see what we can do with that. Okay, so from hierarchies, I can say add a new hierarchy. This is going to be a full model hierarchy and produces a default hierarchy. So this has a number of settings on how the hierarchy arranges, specifically on how references map from one thing to the other. This one decides that it has multiple top-level types. It can't resolve those to one. So when you get to creating your XML file, you can create a root element these will give you additional settings to create your XML files. So you need a prefix, you need a namespace. The tag is if you're creating multiple XML files from the same, or XML schema files from the same model, you need to have different file names. So that produces that. So the other fun thing on your hierarchy is this affects your active display. So we've now activated that hierarchy, and let's turn colorization on. This controls whether you defer or override other colors, how it works with other colors in the model. So notice this immediately colored. Fact-based model is a top-level element. If you click here, it will actually show you the different colors that you can do. This shows that model name is absorbed. Basically, that turns into an attribute or property. The green is the end of the absorption, since these can be multiple steps long. Let's see some other pieces in here. So there's some more greens. Fact type. Okay, so the orange is a reference. The blue is a primary containment. So this is saying that the fact type contains the role. So with the hierarchy activated, you can also select in your active hierarchy. So that will take you to that element inside the hierarchy. Sometimes it's kind of hard to guess exactly where you ended up and where all the chaining is. So that gives you the full hierarchy. If this were in a project, you could now add a XML schema generator and produce a schema file for this.
The last feature I'll show is the derivation rule editor. This will be with the fact type. You can also do this for subtypes, join paths, on constraints, and dynamic roles, which all use a very similar paradigm. So the basic idea here is it's point and click through the model, which creates a formal derivation rule. It's not text-based. However, you do have a text-based feedback loop in the verbalization.
Here I've added a fact type called object has value role. What we're trying to capture is this pattern. So we have an object type, a single row uniqueness constraint here, and a value type on the other side. So let's see how we can derive this. So the first thing we need to do is add a derivation rule. Add derivation rule. Now we need a starting point, and this starting point will be object type. So we have the object type. We're going to go for the uniqueness role first. So the object type is part of a role. Now if we move from role, we want a constraint. Set constraint covers uniqueness constraint. And we have a couple things to save from the uniqueness constraint. So the first thing is it needs to type. We need to know it's a uniqueness constraint. We'll just take internal uniqueness. So I'm going to click here and put a range condition of internal uniqueness. We're going to go back here to the same constraint node and add a modality. There's modality. Same approach here. We want the modality to be alethic. Okay. Next thing we want is to make sure that we only have one role in that constraint. So we're going to find another role and negate its existence. Right? So we want to say find another role. We want this to be a negated fact type. Let's insert that role as the next step. Now we're going to add a condition that says the roles are not the same. Okay, so here's our calculation. We want to make sure that role 1 is not role 2, and we're not using this for output, so we have to flag it as a path condition. Okay, so now we have a constrained role with a single role uniqueness on it. We have to go back now to our role. Now we're going to branch off this role again and get the fact type for it. Belongs to the fact type. The fact type contains a role. The role hosts an object type, and the object type has a data, maps to a data type. Okay, we don't care what data type is, just mapping to a data type means it's a value type. Okay, and now of course we want to make sure that these roles are not the same. So we add another calculation very similar to the first. We want our first role, role 1, to not be role 3. And make that a path condition. Path condition is true. Now the last thing to do is we have multiple object types and multiple roles, so it wasn't able to just choose the one and only on either of these. So we're going to grab that object type, and we're going to grab the third role is the one on the value role. Okay, so at this point we should have a valid derivation role, and we can actually see the verbalization down here. There's your derivation.
I'm out of time to show anything else. There are a couple more features in here. One of those is an eCore importer, which pulls in an entity relationship model, much like you can do a database import. The other one is a bunch of generators for the JavaScript fact engine or Jiffy framework, which I've written in parallel as an ORM implementation. That is a long presentation in and of itself, so I'll let you read the slide on that. And that is NORMA Pro in a nutshell.